Call the meeting to order. I think Roger's harvesting, but can we do roll call, Don? Do we have enough for quorum?
We do. Mayor Mahoney?
Here.
Mayor Dardis?
Here.
Mayor Carlson?
Here.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Hendrickson? Mr. Pepcorn? Mr. Ebinger?
Here.
Mr. Strand? Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mrs. Sterling?
Here.
Mr. Grinberg?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
And Mr. Seljewold will likely be back. He had to run to the airport. And we have a quorum.
Very good. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 26, 2023 meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Consent agenda. We would approve the following A, B, and C. Do I have a motion?
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
And is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Mahoney?
Yes.
Mayor Dardis?
Yes.
Mayor Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Ebinger?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Sterling?
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Very good. Executive Director report, Joe Paulson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. So a number of outreach efforts were conducted this last month. I think the most notable was the DIS turnover celebration. I think most board members attended that. So you can see the plaque that will be placed on the diversion inlet really shows the partnership between the Corps of Engineers, the City of Fargo, City of Moorhead, and the Diversion Authority. So that was a wonderful event. Some very nice words from Senator Hoeven as he presented that plaque. We also had 3 presentations at the Minnesota Association of Floodplain Managers Conference, which took place in Moorhead. Mayor Carlson was able to co-present with us. We also had a number of staff from Jacobs and the Diversion Authority present on different aspects of the program. And then we did have a project tour for that conference with a tour bus that went and visited the different project elements. Chris and I and Tom also did multiple presentations for different high schools. You can see the Norman County High School did visit us and took a tour of the project. And then Tom and I did do presentations at the City of Horace High School for their environmental science class about the project. A lot of interest from the students. Also highlighted different career paths, obviously, that would be available for them post-construction or post-graduation. And then the last day I did travel to Bismarck and I presented the project at the American Council of Engineering Companies. That is a group that represents all of the consulting engineers within the state of North Dakota. So obviously a lot of interest in the project development and where we got to. And what we didn't get in time for your packet, which is actually pretty exciting. I know Commissioner Peterson and Mayor Mahoney and co-executive director Wilson were at the White House this week. And so I don't know if the chair has anything he'd like to say about that.
The White House wanted to talk about our infrastructure loan that they gave us or grant that they gave us. And I have to report that in Minnesota, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota, we were probably the biggest grantee with the $437 million. So they were very pleased with that and happy that the project is moving forward.
Great. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Very good. John Shockley, you have something to talk about today? Nope. Construction project updates. Is it Terry Williams that's online? Or present?
Terry is online.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, Chairman Mahoney and board members. This is the Corps' update for the month of November. You should have a copy of it in your packet. As Joe mentioned, the diversion inlet structure had the event last month. Want to thank everybody for attending and the City of Fargo for helping us host that. The inlet structure is 99% complete. We're up 1% from last month. The Completion date is likely to go beyond December due to the ongoing gate machinery motor issues. Number 2, the wild rice, 91% complete. The primary activity going on is completing the earthen dam to the east of the structure that ties into the I-29 project. Number 3, I-29 raised. Big news there was that all new lanes were open, and I believe it was on Halloween. I think that happened on 31 October, but it was by 1 November as promised. And we're starting to work on O&M documentation for the turnover of that project. On to number 4, the Red River structure, that's covered beautifully in the drone footage. We're at about 42% complete right now. Number 5, the Drain 27 wetland mitigation project, that also is really covered nicely in the drone footage. Some beautiful footage captured. A lot of the planting's done. They have to wait and do some of it in the spring of next year, and then it transitions into the 5-year maintenance period, development and maintenance period. Number 6, Drayton Dam, a huge milestone. The final inspection was conducted this week, and Drayton Dam is done except for the willow plantings that have to occur next year. And we will be turning that over to the Diversion Authority shortly for operations and maintenance. So another huge milestone this month. Number 7, Reach SC2A. The contractor is basically shutting down for winter. Scheduled completion date is still the end of September of next year. And then on to our design products. Number 8, all of these are the same as reported last month with the exception of SC2B. Last month, we said that we would be awarding a contract in April of 24. We're trying to pull that up so that it's earlier in the year. So now we're showing that as being January. With that, that's my report, unless there's any questions, Chairman.
Terry, on Southern Embankment, we have the P3 people continuing to build through the winter. Why are they pulling back?
So the dam or levees really cannot be built in the winter. They require certain moisture and compaction. And so they really can't be constructing the dam in the winter. Whereas the P3 contractor, as I understand it, they will not be building levee in the winter, but they can excavate and place material in the EMBs, which has no compaction or real moisture stipulations on it.
Thank you. Project updates, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chair and board members. Real quick update today. Not a lot new on the map with the quick turn in meetings. So a lot of the same features, as Terry mentioned, are still under construction for us. Probably the couple of things to note on the map. We are getting geared up for portions of the project to be completed. So we're adding a couple of legend items in there. So look for those in the future. We're going to do that in 2 stages. One, there's likely going to be a point in time, like Terry mentioned with the Drain 27, where the project will be functionally complete, but there might be some lingering minor items. So we'll note that. There'll probably be some segments that'll come into the functional category fairly quickly. And then there's the final completion, which means we've got all of our punch lists and all the minor things taken care of as well. So just to add to the map some coloring of kind of which portions of the project are mostly ready to operate, but maybe aren't completely done yet. So anticipate that coming up in the near future. A couple of the other things, as Terry mentioned too, we are heading into winter construction mode. We are working hard to get the Channel Reach 9 levees constructed. I think that's happening this week. Terry was correct. We do not build levees in the winter for the same reason she noted for the southern embankments. But then the channel excavation is intended to get up through Reach 9, which extends us south of 94. So the intention through the winter is to have the channel excavation up into that I-94 area for next spring. So those are the main highlights for the construction update. On the safety side, just not going to spend a lot of time on this with the quick turn in meetings that we didn't have new data. So we'll present the actual October data at the December meeting and have to catch up the November timing in the January meeting. One note I do want to make here, kind of another positive note for the project. ASN was awarded a 2023 AGC Safety Award. They submitted for the project, so they were awarded that here recently, and that was a nice accolade for both ASN safety program and for the project. So,
Could you please send John Strand a copy of that?
for sure,
Thank
for
you.
sure. With that, I'll stand for any questions, and then
Any
we'll head into
questions,
the
Chris?
drone update.
Thank you.
You bet.
Drone video, who's going to show that?
Hi, I'm Chris Bakigard, the Director of Engineering for the Metro Flood Diversion Authority. I'm your guide for this month's virtual tour of construction progress on the FM Area Diversion Project. Our drone view starts with a few of the 17 crossings that are underway for the 30-mile stormwater diversion channel. Commuters from the north side of Fargo will be happy to hear that the I-29 roadway bypasses were completed at the beginning of November. Work will continue in the area, however, without impacting traffic. ASN Constructors is installing wick drains and surcharge embankments, which are early steps for building the I-29 crossing. Just southwest of there, ASN is pouring concrete bridge abutments for the County Road 32 crossing. Concrete work will continue with the bridge piers as well. To the northeast, near the diversion outlet, they recently completed the County Roads 4 and 31 road realignments. ASN then moved on to doing structural excavation and driving H-piles for the bridge abutments and piers for the new combined crossing. Excavation continues on the channel itself, with work taking place in reaches 4, 8, and 9. Dirt work will continue through the winter as ASN pushes through frigid temps and snow with a goal of moving 2 million cubic yards of earth each month. ASN Constructors also has been driving H-piles at the Maple River Aqueduct site, both for the flume and adjacent wing wall. Once completed, there will be more than 9 miles of piling supporting the structure. They completed a sheet pile skirt that surrounds the flume base and now are installing formwork for the first of many concrete pours for the structure's base. Roughly 10,000 cubic yards of concrete, enough to fill 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools, will be needed for the entire structure. Speaking of structures and concrete work, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is nearly done pouring the concrete abutments and approach walls on the upstream side of the Red River structure. Their contractor, Ames Construction, is also working on the piers, stilling basin walls, and baffle blocks on the downstream side. A temporary bridge across the Red River is also under construction and will allow access to the eastern limits of the job site. We have a final look at the Drain 27 wetland mitigation project for you this month as well. Earlier this year, we saw the site in action as runoff from the spring melt filled the excavation behind the earthen embankment and weir structure, which were completed in 2022. It gave us a glimpse of how these features will function to both maintain wetland habitat and provide drainage, as intended, for years to come. Last month, 6 native seed mixes ranging from marsh wetlands to mesic prairie upland areas were planted across the 330-acre site. These plantings will be maintained for another 5 years to help ensure full turf establishment. For perspective, the wetland area is more than twice the size of Disneyland. It has been a busy, productive year for the FM Area Diversion Project, with numerous partners working hard towards permanent, reliable flood protection. If you would like more regular project updates, you can follow the MFDA on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and X.
Communications team update, Amy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Just a few quick things for you this month. We released a couple new videos, Faces of the Diversion with Greg Yavicoli, which was really well received, and then an animated video that talked through how they will be doing excavation through the winter, since that's rather unusual. I hope you had a chance to see some of the media releases and articles that have been published recently, including the nice 9-page spread in Engineering News Record. The DIS turnover was widely covered by all local media. And then the bridge that just came out, I believe within the past week, has a piece on MFDA and ASN and the project. Next up, we're working on some year in review pieces so we can look back at all that's been accomplished before the year comes to an end. And then I'd just like to highlight we broke records again with open rate and click-through rate on the newsletter this month. So it's great to see we're about double the industry average for people reading the newsletter. So that's great. That's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, happy birthday,
Oh, and
Joe.
look at that.
Land management, please.
Certain
Jody?
shade of red behind me right now. So on the screen before you, you'll notice the channel on the left-hand side of the screen. There's still a couple of parcels that we need to close up on. I'm hopeful that we'll continue to close those by the end of the calendar year. I know there's one that might slip into 2024. Again, all the acquisitions have been complete. It's just a matter of completing the purchase agreement and closing documents on those. So huge success for the team. Again, the land agents as well as our legal team that's continuously put forth effort on that. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll note anything in the shade of green are the property rights that we needed to acquire and have successfully acquired. There's several blue parcels over on the Minnesota side. I want to thank the Moorhead-Clay County Joint Power Authority. They did have a lengthy conversation earlier today and approved 8 parcels. So you'll start seeing those tiles turn green in the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. On the North Dakota side, did approve 12 parcels this morning. So you'll continue to see these close. The dark orange color are those that have entered into eminent domain. Again, we do continue to negotiate on those, and hopefully we'll be able to reach settlement on many of those parcels. On the next slide is just an update within the construction footprint. We're sitting at 92.2%. Again, some of the approvals from the various boards earlier today will up that number in the upcoming months, and the UMA footprint, we are up to a little over 45%. Again, with the approvals that were this morning with the Cass County Joint Board in particular, there were 11 parcels that were approved this morning that are in the UMA footprint. So we do continue to make progress on that. The next slide gets into each of the components. So the southern embankment, we've seen a slight increase, as well as the upstream mitigation area. And then the environmental monitoring easement, there was another one that was approved today by the Moorhead-Clay County. On the next slide, we break it down again just to the construction footprint and the UMA footprint. I'll spend a little bit more time focusing on this last slide. So again, as I mentioned, we're continuing to negotiate settlement agreements for those that we're already in eminent domain with. In the last month, we did successfully close on 23 parcels, 8 in Minnesota, 15 in North Dakota, with 11 landowners. I know tomorrow we have a closing set on 20 parcels, and on December 15th, we already have 8 kind of in the queue with some additional ones that will probably close on December 15th. So continue to make that progress. That we did send the last written offers to 51 landowners in Minnesota. We have received acceptance offers from 4 property owners. We can add an additional 4 that the MCC JPA just approved, so we'll have 8 of those. Again, we continue those negotiations with those property owners, particularly for the Clay County ones. I will be authorizing eminent domain on those property owners that did receive a last written offer but have not successfully reached a settlement with us today still. On November 8th, the Horace City Council voted unanimously to withdraw the purchase of the BNSF rail corridor and their proposed agreement with Cass County Joint and the MFDA properties. I can tell you as soon as that deal or the withdrawal of that deal kind of hit the streets, we have received numerous phone calls from property owners along the rail corridor who are interested in working with us to purchase that property. The Cass County Joint Water Resource District this morning did approve purchasing the remainder of the corridor. So that would be south of Horace, butting up right to the channel for a little over $600,000. That was a requirement with our agreement with BNSF. So as soon as that has closed, then I'll be working with Mr. Paulson and with the various boards to go ahead and push some of that rail corridor through the excess lands policy. And then just the last item on here, I know that we have had several parcels going through the excess lands policy already. The first preference letters to the sale of 2 sets of those were mailed out to the member entities several weeks ago. Again, that would be the portions along SE1 and then some right-of-way strips that Cass County has expressed interest in. There's one other parcel that the board did authorize us to move forward on, and I'm just waiting for the appraisal to come back prior to sending that first preference letter out.
Any questions of Jody? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Finance update, Mayor Dardis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met yesterday. We had a number of issues that we addressed. First and foremost, we approved the bills of $3,004,240. We also had a finance report with our net position less liabilities at $199,983,872. We had 3 actions that contracting actions that we addressed that Mr. Paulson brought forward. They were all passed unanimously. And in other business, we had another issue with a conversation about the Fargo South University flood wall, which would be taken up by the full board today. We had a robust discussion on that topic. That's my report, Mr. Chairman. If there's any questions, I'll stand to answer them.
Any questions, Mayor Dardis? Thank you.
Thank you.
City of South University flood wall repair. I did give the members here, and I'll have Don send out copies of it as well to the members that aren't here, of a resolution that was approved in January 2022 when Chad Peterson was chair. This was a topic came up in finance yesterday, and we didn't have all the data in front of you, so that kind of helps. Is there a policy? Yes, there is a policy. But Joe will explain what happened. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As Mayor Dardis had indicated, there was a fairly lengthy conversation about this proposed South University flood wall repair project. I think really, from my perspective, the reason there was a lot of discussion, one, it relates to a specific resolution that we have with the City of Fargo that does outline a specific process to deal with project scope areas that weren't initially contemplated in the City of Fargo's local member entity budget for in-town flood protection. Just a little background, this is a chronological order of events that kind of leads us to where we're at today. I just wanted to go through this because I think it's important that we have the full history of where this came from. And then I do want to get into the resolution a little bit and highlight some points for the board's discussion today on whether to move forward or not. So as you can see here, the original project was constructed in 2009. This was a project that was constructed to pass water at 37 feet. So it is considered a levee, in-town levee project that is necessary for project operation, accreditation, and certification. As well as the ability to pass 37 feet. In 2018, the City of Fargo had indicated some settlement of the flood wall in a fairly small location. So they did implement measures to begin to monitor that. In 2019, they contracted with Braun Intertech to install sensors along the riverbank to review the movement of what was happening there. The first time the authority had a meeting with Fargo was in July of 2020. That initial meeting was with myself, a member of the MFDA board, as well as Fargo staff to investigate the slumping along the flood wall site and look at potential options for repair. At that time, it appeared that the bank was slowing in its movement. So it was agreed between authority staff and city staff to hold on any permanent repair, but that a temporary repair to basically armor the bank of the river was a prudent step to prevent any future movement, in the hopes of preventing any future movement. So kind of fast forward, that was really the impetus to a resolution that was developed between the MFDA and the City of Fargo basically outlining the procedures for dealing with projects such as this that are either in the scope of the City of Fargo's budget or projects that come up that are outside of the scope, and how the board and authority staff processes those requests. And so I will get into that resolution here shortly. And then in 2022, the resolution was approved by this board as well as the Finance Committee. Subsequent to that, if you could scroll down one more. Fargo did include the temporary repair project in the 2022 development plan. That plan was presented to the MFDA board and Finance Committee. That was approved, and it was included in our 2022 cash budget. Fargo did attempt to bid the temporary repair project in 2022. The bids came in higher than what the proposed budget was, and so those bids were rejected. In 2023, the development plan was updated with the temporary repair project. That was approved by the MFDA Finance Committee and the MFDA Board, and it was included in the 2023 cash budget, which really leads us here today. The temporary repair project is being implemented. There has been riprap that has been installed along the cut bank of the Red River that is preventing any future erosion from occurring, which was really the driver for the slope stability and the slumping of the river bank. Fargo is asking for a continuation of this for a permanent repair on the flood wall. And the development plan was included in your board packet for consideration for the 2024 cash budget. So with that, I wanted to move just a bit into the resolution that we have. I think these points are important for consideration today, in that the board has the ability to kind of have a refresher here. So I did highlight some items on here. If you could scroll down to the first highlighted area. This is just the whereases, but I think these are important as far as if, the question raised yesterday in the Finance Committee meeting was, is this levee project a part of the diversion project? I think, you can see here the authority is responsible for coordinating the design, planning, and construction of all the non-federal work. The non-federal work is defined as the in-town levees, both in Moorhead and in Fargo. And so this levee project is certainly a component of the overall diversion project and a requirement for us to be able to operate. The JPA further provides that the non-federal work will be generally allocated among the member entities, meaning that the member entities will implement the non-federal work as appropriate within their jurisdictions, and that we will coordinate all efforts with the authority. And Fargo has certainly been doing that. If you move down, just another highlighted area, that's a bullet point that does also explain the in-town levies located in the city of Fargo as being a part of the non-federal work and a part of the diversion project. The additional whereas here specifies that the JPA provides the authority with the authorization to adopt operating procedures regarding the bidding, contracting, and payment procedures for in-kind work elements. And that is really what is contained in this overall resolution, is that process. And then the final whereas I think is extremely important, that all non-federal work is in compliance with the WIFIA requirements, which is of utmost importance for the authority and something that we need to be involved in. Move to the next one. I think just also talks about definition on non-federal work. That includes all the in-town levies. Now we get a little bit into the procedural elements here. I just wanted to highlight these, and I did want to convey to the board that all of these procedures were followed up to date, including the development plan within your board packet today. But basically, starting with the first highlighted area, any change in scope of an approved in-kind work element shall be approved by the diversion board. So that is why the development plan is in your packet today. On an annual basis, prior to the applicable member entity seeking official approval from its governing body of the applicable member entity's annual capital improvement plan, the applicable member entity and the authority's director of engineering and his or her designee will mutually review and update the in-kind work plan. So this was reviewed by both Nathan Borboom and Chris Backyard, and those reviews were agreed upon between those two parties to include this in the proposed work plan for 2024. The next item, C, just outlines the procedure for the authority, the finance committee, and the board for approving those. So if the budget for the cost of an in-kind work element exceeds the initial estimated total project cost, the applicable member entity and the authority's director of engineering will present the updates to the in-kind work elements to the finance committee and the diversion authority board for review and approval. And that was presented to finance committee yesterday. However, a lot of the questions surrounded this procedure. We did not have this available to pull out during the finance committee meeting. Such the reason that I'm presenting it here for your consideration today. I did highlight a small area off to the side there because I think there was a lot of discussion about operation and maintenance and what those costs are as far as the authority's responsibility. I wanted to report to the board that we are still in discussions really with all member entities. I did send out a request to all member entities earlier this year for a compilation of all proposed operation and maintenance items contained within the member entities. To date, I still have not received anything back, and so it's a continuing discussion. And I do want to maybe put a little asterisk here because our financial plan is very complex. As we continue to move through construction, our contingency will be funded through additional bonding that would be necessary. If we do not use our contingency and do not have to bond, that really presents a large amount of the sales tax that can then be directed towards operation and maintenance along with our O&M levy. So it's really kind of up in the air at this point because we're in the middle of construction as far as what the capacity of the authority is going to be from a monetary perspective for operation and maintenance activities at the end. And so the provisions of the JPA do discuss that the member entities will kind of backstop the authority. So what the board needs to understand is the authority is only going to have so much revenue for operation and maintenance activities. If those activities exceed our caps that we have, the member entities will have to step in and assist with that operation and maintenance. So it's a very complex subject. It needs continued discussion over the next few years, and of course, continued focus on management of our contingency as we continue through construction. So I just want to move. I got one more item I think is important. If you want to scroll down, Peggy. It just has to do with the executive director's approval process. So anything under 200,000 related to changes in the scope of work related to the city of Fargo the board has given the executive director the ability to approve that. However, anything over 200,000 needs to be brought to the board and the finance committee. So just getting down to the project development sheet. So this was in your board packet for consideration. This was a sheet that is required for the city of Fargo to prepare and fill out and work with our engineering director and then ultimately submit to the board for consideration. This sheet does have the overall permanent flood wall fix at a $4.8 million price tag, and that is what is being requested to be included in the cash budget for 2024. I do want to note that in discussions on the budget, it appears that the city of Fargo is still maintaining about a $6 million contingency. I did have a quick discussion with Administrator Redlinger about that, and it's yet to determine if we want to continue to maintain that contingency or allocate that contingency to this proposed project. If we went above and beyond the scope of the city of Fargo's budget, we obviously would have to go back through the process with finance committee and the board. And if you just scroll down a little bit more, there's a few pictures of the proposed location. Here you can see the flood wall failure area. You can see the riprap along the cut bank there. Basically, what's occurred here is the river has significantly eroded around this bend since 2009, when the project was initially designed and implemented, such that the erosion has crept close to the flood wall and caused bank stability issues, as you can see in these photos. So I certainly have Mr. Shockley, myself, Mr. Bakigard, and Mr. Borboom available for any questions that the board might have.
One of the members asked whether sheet piling could have been used in this. It may have helped with the stabilization.
Yeah, I think that concept was looked at as a temporary mechanism, but it was not deemed, as far as I understand, it was not deemed appropriate for a permanent fix to ensure that this flood wall stays. One of the constraints on this site is where the University Drive is located, and then on the other side of University Drive is a cemetery. So there really is no room to modify the location of where this flood wall is put. It really needs to stay in the existing location that it is. And so long term, there needs to be a permanent fix. And the way I understand, it's also continuing to slide into the river. And so it has become kind of an emergency situation that should be done sooner than later. Least there be additional costs to install a permanent fix.
So per following the policy, just so the board members understand, the fix that we're presently doing with riprap and the boulders in there is 23 budget. It's in our budget. Went through finance, went through the board last year, basically. That was a $2.4 million cost. So that we've already looked at and knew. At that time, as I understand it, I was there, Nathan did talk to the wall was going to have something done. Nathan informs you now that the wall is now turning and starting to fall into the river. So it's something we can't leave forever, but to have a completion of the diversion, it has to be qualified and certified. And that's why it's a question, do you do it now or do you do it later? But we didn't know yesterday, I think, when we had a finance discussion, the policy. So that was the problem. Very surely.
Thank you. So if I'm to understand, this is non-federal work that was done prior to the project.
That's correct. This was not considered federal work. This is considered non-federal work in kind under the PPA agreement.
So just so I'm clear, over the years, there's been a lot of work done throughout Fargo and Moorhead and Cass, and I assume Clay County. Well, I know Clay County on the north side especially. So those would allow, the 37 feet, they're part of it. So is that a liability for this board as well going forward, all of those areas that provide protection?
Yeah, it certainly is. We would not be able to operate the project and maintain accreditation without having the ability to pass 37 feet. And so if we are not meeting freeboard requirements or if we're missing components of the flood wall, we certainly open ourselves up for risk during a flood event. Now, you could do temporary measures during a flood event to actually pass that water. However, you would not be able to maintain the accreditation and that comes along with the flood insurance requirements.
So I think last year on University straight down 31 or 81, about 2 miles south of there, we had some similar slumping only on the other side of the road into the wild rice. We got considerable help from the North Dakota State Water Commission. And my engineer's in the audience, he would know how much, but it was an expensive fix because University Drive was actually, ready to crater into the wild rice. And it really helped the county out. Have you investigated any other funding sources?
We have not.
Thank you.
Tony Grenberg.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Maybe this is a John Shockley question. help me or walk me through what this section that Joel referenced, in kind. Because in my mind, in kind, an entity is doing work at their expense. I'm just not tracking the terminology here that from a in kind, and why is that cited that way?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Grinberg. The term in kind comes out of the JPA and is in reference to work that was previously performed by the member entities as part of the project. So it's in kind works that you would, the intent was that they were part of the project and it was sort of a contribution by the member entities. So you have in kind works that were pre-existing to the project that were performed by Moorhead, performed by Fargo, and some of the other jurisdictions. And so that's why we utilize the word in kind.
Okay, so then if I may, we understand that there's, at some point in the future, we're going to agree to an O&M agreement with, and so I understand also that could be a couple years to complete. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what Hall Talk's been. With an O&M agreement, what does that constitute or put in place that's different maybe from this resolution?
So a great question. What I would compare this resolution to is more the generic setting forth. This is our generic policy. The actual O&M policy is going to be more specific, and that's why in discussions with the planning committee and the executive director had sent out the letters to the member entities to gather that information so that we could start putting together the specifics of the O&M policy, which will include specific identifications of all the structures so that there's a comprehensive listing available, and how and when operations will be conducted, how those will be paid for, and then maintenance, short-term maintenance and long-term maintenance, and who's responsible for putting together the schedule. Do you and I'm gonna mess this up, but do you put money into lift station A this year, or do you put it into maintaining the Tainer gates, which is a priority because you have a budget, just like any political subdivision would do. There'll be a budget, and that's what that plan is intended to be part of. And that's the genesis of the request from the member entities, what's supposed to be included, so that we can go through that with the technical folks, figure out what should be included, and then we can start putting together a budget and a plan for operating it and maintaining it long term.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Chairman, to add then, this was one of the issues that was raised yesterday from the discussion about the O&M, and then from a finance committee perspective, in my opinion, it was, we're the guardians of the checkbook and trying to understand how this thing, moves forward from an objective standpoint. And knowing, to Joel's point earlier about the complexity of the financial model, if you go and listen to the minutes or watch the video yesterday, it was confirmed this is not in the project scope, nor is it in the 2024 budget at this time. I think Joe maybe alluded to a different perspective on that, but if you go listen to the minutes, that's how it was confirmed yesterday. And so for me, I'm somewhat disappointed that we have this additional information at a diversion authority meeting when questions were being asked about this 3 or 4 months ago. And so I think that's fair for us to have a real regimented or robust, as Mayor Dardis called it, discussion on this so that the precedent that moves forward, what does that look like? None of us can answer that question at this point. Mm-hmm. And the discussions about the engineering firm that originally designed it to the one that's now already been contracted with, the staff got out in front of their skis. Let's call it what it is. They were already committed to a contract, assuming we were going to approve this. Think about that. So the point is, I think from a standpoint of moving forward, I think we all agree we have to have a remedy for this. To your point, Mayor Mahoney, this has to be certified when the project's done. And yes, I think we all understand that if we delay, we don't do it next year, the costs are going to go up. But I think the fundamental questions that even Commissioner Sherling asks haven't been answered. And so that's my frustration with this at this point. And at a minimum, today's discussion, we didn't take action yesterday. At a minimum, I thought this was obviously something we should discuss today. But in my opinion, it needs to go back to finance So the full finance committee has the updates, rather than just an assumption that this DA board is going to approve it today and bypass finance again.
Mayor Dardis.
I'm extremely grateful that Commissioner Sherling brought up the point about the State Water Commission and how they participated in the slumping that took place. In addition, yesterday, one of the main questions was and centered around also whether or not the city's insurance carrier might be involved in this as well, due to the big fact that it's a geotechnical failure as to whether or not, with all the engineering firms that were engaged and involved in this, it might fall within there. And that question was posed to Mr. Redlinger, and he assured the group that he was going to do the research on that as to whether or not that might be a possibility too. And so my point is in support of what Commissioner Grinberg is talking about. This may be a December item that we need to discuss rather than a November discussion, because there are still some unanswered questions as to whether or not the State Water Commission might participate, or the insurance companies would take a look at this as well. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. Joel, I want to thank you for taking us back in history a little bit, because it is helpful and it's important in this whole conversation, going back a number of years ago, what has transpired. And if you recall, when we were first going through this, there was a discussion about what level of water should even be allowed to flow through the towns. And when we first started discussing this, that number was 32 or 33 feet. And obviously there was no way to mitigate the impacts of keeping it that low. And through the work of North Dakota Water Commission, Minnesota DNR, and a lot of people, that 37-foot number was agreed to. And part of that then was that this entire project on both sides of the river needs to have that 37-foot level of protection. And it's been my understanding ever since that all of that work that's done to that point is the responsibility of the Diversion Authority to maintain. I think it's going to be critical, Tony, to go into one of the things you're talking about. I think we're going to really have to really understand what assets are owned by the responsibility of the Diversion Authority. And that goes to the long-term O&M. We're going to have that figured out. And whether it's the slumping of Highway 81 or whatever this particular project is, or if it's the slumping of a flood wall in North Moorhead, the same scenario or the same method that we deal with is going to have to deal with all of them. And unfortunately, this particular project, in itself has taken so long. We're already having beginnings of the work done, having some sort of failure or work necessary to work on them before the end project is even done. And that just goes to the length of time that this project has taken to get to completion. So I think it's fine that it should go. I do believe it should go back to the Finance Committee if it was never couldn't come up with anything. But I think we need to be looking at the full scope and what isn't, not this particular repair that needs to be done, but every repair that's going to need to be done. And how are we going to treat them, and how are we going to treat them fairly? Are they a necessity of the diversion project? It's not just the channel that we have to deal with. Everything that the Corps of Engineers has done, it's going to be turned over to us as a responsibility to fix. And so I think we need to have a comprehensive look at this in terms of establishing what are the assets of the Diversion Authority and what are the responsibilities. And in the meantime, things still are going to need to be fixed. And that's what we're talking about here in long-term O&M. That's going to take a little while. We're not going to get that done in 2 months or 3 months. But the fact of the matter is I look at this project as being something that is needed for the scope of the project, and we need to figure out how to fix it.
Jason, are you available? I just want to understand the Water Commission, why they gave money for that project.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Commission members. So based on just, and I have to refresh my memory here because it's been a while since I dealt with it, but based on the riverbank slumping and the impact to infrastructure, our road infrastructure, as well as there's City of Fargo wastewater line that runs along that portion of the road down to Oxbow. So because of the critical nature of some of those facts, that led to the State Water Commission authorizing funding for that.
But it wasn't part of the flood diversion project.
It had nothing to do, and it was not a flood control portion of the project.
Commissioner Shirley, we would surely look at that if we get any more money, but I think Commissioner Grinberg remembers when we've gone to the state, this is it, we're not giving you any more money. So if we could find it, I'd be happy for us to take it. I do, Commissioner Grinberg, we have talked about O&M for almost 6 months now. We had heated discussions early on about O&M, and I think you're right in many ways. We need to move that forward. So people, we should set times or dates like we typically do. Let's look into this and get it done. I think the other thing the members need to know as part of the issue is when it's done in 26, 27, part of the O&M may be a drain fee or assessment to all people in the community. So it is important for us to figure out how it's going to be paid and what's going to happen. And so I think that's a thorough discussion the group should have. Joel, there's no reason we can delay it a month. It doesn't matter. It'd be good to go through a finance committee. And to be frank, you didn't have this data yesterday. You didn't know anything about it. So, but I think what Kevin and I talked about, we almost have to know what our assets are. The assets in the county, the cities, what assets does the DA responsible for? Because this is a budget change and these things will happen and we're going to have failures as we go through this for 30 years. I mean, it's going to be, something's going to happen. But we at least have a policy that was been outlined. All members are part of this policy, so that's something that has been accomplished. I think communication, Joel, has to be worked on. I think maybe better communication with team members because we sometimes, I didn't remember that it was a 2.4 million and went through here, but that has happened. And we're following the protocol that we have, so that's what's going to happen. But I would entertain a table motion to take this till the Finance Committee has looked at it next month.
Mr. Chair, just one suggestion for the discussion. Commissioner Grimberg had mentioned that the City of Fargo did retain an engineering firm. That was really to determine what to do and how much the project was going to cost. So the preliminary engineering work to make the proposal for the proposed fixed. I would suggest, if it be prudent, that we continue with the engineering firm over the next month to further refine that project. And so the suggestion from staff would be to have the engineering paid from City of Fargo contingency that's already available in their program budget, and then bring back the overall proposed permanent fix from a overall construction budget at next month's meeting.
Is there a motion?
The engineering part. The design portion, Mr. Paulson?
That's correct. I mean, just to continue the preliminary design and make sure that we have accurate numbers.
Is that 165?
Okay. It's the 165. Right now the construction is estimated at the 4 million. I do want to mention that part of that preliminary design work that the engineering firm did reduce what was potentially a $10 million cost to a $4 million cost through value engineering. So it's certainly been valuable to have had done that task, prior to this point.
I would move to the 165 for engineering and design purposes.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, again, getting granular, made that comment a couple of times yesterday. This shows 150,000. So I don't know where 165 came from.
There's a contingency noted below that, Mr. Grinberg. Is there not?
It just says percentage of the project complete 25%.
Okay, go down lower and there's a contingency of 10%, I believe. So 150,000 and 15.
That's all encompassing then.
Yeah, 165. Am I correct, Mr. Paulson?
Yes, that appears correct.
Mr. Chair, I would second.
Second that. Any further discussion? Mayor Carlson, are you on? Anything you want to comment?
Nope, I'm on. I've been listening, and I think it's going to be helpful to have continued conversations around this and expedite the conversations, since some of this seems to be coming up sooner than maybe we anticipated.
Very good. Any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Mayor Mahoney?
Yes.
Mayor Dardis?
Yes.
Mayor Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Ebbinger?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg?
No.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Salzwald?
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Any other business this body?
Mr. Chair, I know that there was a suggestion about tabling this till the next meeting. I don't know that I guess I would just like to make a motion that item number 10A would be referred back to the Finance Committee for further discussion and recommendations.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, as we all know, I was going to get on the record for this. This decision, this discussion, as I've been looking around, I've been panting back and forth through aerials of our river. It's kind of, if you're curious. The way this goes could be substantive into perpetuity for this project. There's any number of these situations or scenarios that can present themselves along this entire river corridor. And they may or may not be impactful for the diversion. They may just be what happens because God intervenes in things sometimes. And I think this discussion amongst staff and engineering is going to be a big deal. As we grow, we in the county are seeing permits being requested as we push further south. And Mr. Mayor, you know that's happening, whether we like it or not, right? So this is going to be a dynamic conversation that is going to be impactful to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars to our constituents, both Cass and Clay, and those potentially that visit our area. I think it's a big deal. So I'm looking forward to animated and thoughtful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dardis.
I think we all need to take note of what Mr. Campbell had to say regarding this. This diversion is 30 plus miles long. And as Commissioner Peterson and Commissioner Sherling has talked about, you know, that responsibility that this board is going to make is going to go on for generations and generations and generations. Mm-hmm. And what we do on that operation and maintenance will be critical to the success in the operation. And let's also talk about maybe the relationships between two states, and two counties, multiple cities. So every month when we have a finance committee meeting, I get a knot in my stomach. And my knot in my stomach is the numbers that are brought forward, because we know what our program contingency budget is. And at first blush, or for the common person looking at that, that's a lot of money. But when you have one failure that takes up $6 million and your entire contingency for the program is $150 million, this is a critical juncture that this board has to make and has to address on operations and maintenance, because today's actions or future actions regarding this topic could have ramifications, sets a precedent of how we deal with Clay County or Moorhead or whomever. So to Mr. Campbell's point, I certainly hope with your leadership that you will lead that effort on O&M and make sure that that happens. I'm a non-entity member, but I have all the confidence in the world, and I would hope that Kevin Campbell leads that effort. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Dardis, I got gray hair over this project. I'm afraid I'll lose all my hair with that. Yeah.
The sharp look, I could just make a commentary.
Well, it needs to be done, but I think we need to vote on my motion too.
I'm just waiting for discussion to quit here. Anybody else want to comment on this? Mr. Carl or
Yes,
Mayor
Chair
Carlson?
Mahoney. I think as part of this discussion, I am going to recommend that the engineering staff are also involved on these discussions, not just the diversion engineering staff, but also Moorhead, Fargo, Cass Clay County, because they're going to be able to provide some of that technical expertise that I think is going to be valuable and very pertinent to the conversations.
Yeah, and to address that a little bit, Joel's trying to get the technical committee to get together to kind of give us some recommendations to go through that. I think to Commissioner Campbell's comment is what are our assets really hasn't been identified and who's responsible for what. Different entities, we're already putting $500,000 to $750,000 into O&M right now in the city of Fargo. So there are some costs people have. I don't know how much the county has on O&M right now. And I know Moorhead has a fair amount in O&M as well. But it was identifying what do you have. So I think the technical team needs to get together and share those, because when we get involved with politicians, we have no idea what the costs are right now. And I think John Shockley has to be involved with that as well, Mayor Carlson, because of how, quote, the finances are set up and what the expectations is what is going to pay for what. And I think the board needs to be refreshed on that. What is our intention or plan to get through this time? I think Mayor Dardis, you make a good point about the $6 million. It's a fair amount of money that we have to do this. And Commissioner Grinberg, you've always been very cautious about our contingency fund, which you should be, which you have been really one of our champions on. So if there's no further discussion, we will vote on this recommendation.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Ebinger.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Selchwold.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you. Kevin Campbell.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to go back to Mr. Grinberg's question about the in-kind thing. I think another important component of that going back was, all of the work that had been done. When you take a look at what the federal government's input and finance input into it was, I think the fact that we were able to show all of this amount of local investment into this project really helped with the whole federal funding piece of it. So the in-kind it's quite important to the grand scheme and the grand scope of things. I think Mr. Shockley will say that part of his excellent work and all the finance, whether it was WIFI or what have you, the fact that there was such good local in-kind dollars tied to this project help us in obtaining all the federal work that we had done.
I would agree. I follow that understanding
Grinberg.
completely. For us to write a check, though, for this is, to me, not in kind. It's a cash obligation.
It's warranty work.
Sometimes the public doesn't understand how much commitment it is on the local level and our local taxpayers. And I know Commissioner Sherling is always concerned about that. But the city and the county combined right now have put $630 million by sales tax into the project. We will surpass the federal gift and the state's amount of money in the next couple of years. So to your point, it's a fair amount of local investment in this, and we have to make sure, and the contingency fund is there as we go through the project. So it's great discussion today, and I appreciate all the input on this. We were going to have a planning session canceled for December, Joe. I don't know if we shouldn't still have something. We'll look at the calendar, because I think two things are identified also by the commissioners is communication of what's going on with the project and then process of how we do some of these things. And I think the board is a stickler for policy. So we sometimes are wanting things a certain way, but I think it helps us if we're all communicated well too, so we don't have issues come up because we didn't realize what was going on. So we'll talk about that, Joel, going on. Is there any other business? Is there a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.